Baby, the man finally opened his mouth. And honey, I need you to understand something before we go 1 inch further into this story. Papoose did not break his silence because he wanted to. Papoose broke his silence because the silence was starting to sound louder than any denial he could have possibly delivered. And what came out of his mouth when he finally spoke was not a defense. It was a performance. A carefully rehearsed, strategically timed, media-trained performance from a man who reportedly spent weeks moving behind the scenes while the entire hip-hop internet was screaming his name into the void. Claressa Shields, the 2-time Olympic gold medalist, the undisputed champion, the woman with an $8 million win records and Salita Promotions multi-fight deal sitting on her name, is now at the center of a family war that she did not start and did not want. And her own cousin, Shalita Savage, is the one who lit the match. But here is what nobody on YouTube is telling you right now. And this is the part that changes the entire shape of this story. What Shalita is saying is not a one-time explosion. It is a pattern of accusations she has been repeating consistently for months. And the reason the family is splitting down the middle is because the pattern got too specific to ignore. When we get to the Wynn Records deal breakdown later in this video, and I promise you we are getting there, you are going to understand why every single move Papoose has made publicly around Claressa in the last 12 months was never actually about love. It was about positioning. And the moment you see the positioning, you cannot unsee it. 2 timelines are running right now. The one you have been watching on Instagram, and the one that has been quietly determining the outcome of the one you have been watching. And baby, they are not the same story. Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit like, and subscribe. Let's get into it. Okay, so let me set the whole table before we start cutting into it. Because if you do not understand who these people actually are, and what is actually on the line here, none of the rest of this is going to hit the way it should. Claressa Shields is not a regular celebrity. Claressa Shields is arguably the greatest female boxer of all time. 2 Olympic gold medals. Undisputed champion in 3 weight classes. And in 2025, she signed a historic minimum guaranteed $8 million multi-fight partnership with Salita Promotions and Wynn Records, a deal that ESPN called one of the largest ever secured by a female fighter. That deal is the biggest financial moment of her entire life. And standing right next to her the entire time this deal was being negotiated was Papoose, the veteran Brooklyn rapper whose real name is Shamil Mackey, the same Papoose who was married to Remy Ma for over a decade before that entire situation reportedly collapsed under the weight of infidelity allegations that the culture is still whispering about to this day. Papoose is not just Claressa's boyfriend. Papoose has publicly positioned himself as her advisor, her strategist. And in his own words at one point on Drink Champs, the reason she was even in a bidding war for that $8 million deal in the first place. He said, and I want you to hear this exactly the way he said it, that she was in a bidding war because of him, because of his knowledge, because of his strategy, because of Wynn Company. That is a direct claim that he engineered the financial future of a 2-time Olympic champion. Now, let that sit with you for a second. Because when a man publicly takes credit for engineering your biggest deal, and then that same man's connection to a competing management structure becomes a public conversation, you have a problem that is not about love anymore. You have a business problem wearing a relationship costume. Enter Shalita Savage, the cousin, the woman who has been saying for months, loudly and consistently, that Claressa is being played, that the man she trusts with her career, her money, and her name is not who the public thinks he is. That Papoose is spending Claressa's money like water. That Papoose never actually filed for divorce from Remy Ma the way people assumed he did. And that everybody around Claressa calling themselves her best friend is really there for the opportunity, not the person. Now Claressa has already fired back. She has already called Shalita a liar. She has already gone on live and laughed at the accusations. But baby, here is the question that this entire video is going to answer. Why did Papoose stay quiet for so long? And when he finally spoke, why did it sound like a script instead of a man? Let us start with the surface. Because before we get into what insiders are saying and what the industry is whispering, we need to lay out what is publicly, verifiably, undeniably in front of everybody's face right now. Piece of evidence number 1. Shalita Savage went public in a full interview on Tasha K Live and repeated many of the same claims in follow-up videos across her own social channels, alleging that Claressa is being financially drained, that Papoose is not who he presents himself as, and that the divorce narrative around Remy Ma is not as clean as the public was led to believe. This is not a random, anonymous account. This is a woman using her full name, her full face, and her verifiable family connection to make these claims on camera. And when the Shade Room picked up the story, honey, that is when the algorithm caught it and refused to let it go. Piece of evidence number 2. Claressa Shields went on Instagram Live and directly addressed her cousin, calling the surrogate rumors nonsense, denying that she is infertile, denying that Shalita ever carried a child for her, and reportedly making it clear that speaking proudly about Papoose is not a phase and not a reaction to the internet. She was described as visibly angry. Her body language was not the body language of a woman brushing off a rumor. It was the body language of a woman defending a decision she is already emotionally committed to. And baby, the difference between defending a truth and defending a decision is a canyon. One does not need defending. The other one does. Piece of evidence number 3. Papoose himself, in the interview clip that has been circulating for weeks now, addressed the narrative around him and Claressa without ever really addressing it. He talked about people using her for opportunities. He talked about the difference between real friends and opportunists. He never once directly named Shalita. He never once directly denied the financial allegations. He never once directly explained why the divorce paperwork situation looks the way it looks. Instead, he pivoted. He deflected. He redirected the accusation outward, aiming it at everyone around Claressa, while carefully positioning himself as the only person in the room who is not there for a check. That is not a denial, honey. That is misdirection with a Brooklyn accent. Piece of evidence number 4. The BET Awards appearance in 2026. Papoose walked that carpet with Claressa on his arm, cameras clicking, publicity teams positioning them as one of hip-hop's power couples of the year. 12 months of relentless public appearances. Every ESPN interview, every Drink Champs sit down, every red carpet, every training room video, every couple's goals post. And now, the moment the family accusations land, suddenly the same man who is everywhere becomes measured, careful, and very deliberately quiet. A man who is innocent does not carefully manage a narrative. A man who is innocent picks up the phone, calls the cousin directly, and clears the air. He does not go on a podcast and speak in riddles about opportunists. And oh, do I have more for you? Because if you thought the surface stuff was interesting, wait until we get into what people who actually know these two are saying behind closed doors. The Papoose fans are really not going to like this next part. Because the receipts that are starting to circulate in group chats and in insider circles are not just about Shalita anymore. They are about a much bigger name. A name that has been silent for a very long time, but whose shadow is all over this entire situation. And I'm going to tell you exactly what I am hearing, exactly what has been reported, and exactly why the timing of Papoose's public statement lines up suspiciously well with a completely different conversation that has been happening in the background. Stay with me. Because when the cultural evidence starts stacking up, the story stops being about a cousin and starts being about a pattern. Let us get into the cultural layer. Piece of evidence number 1 at this level. Remy Ma. The name nobody wants to say out loud, but everybody is thinking. There have been reports circulating on Reddit's love and hip-hop threads and across multiple gossip aggregators claiming that Remy Ma allegedly surfaced text messages suggesting Papoose and Claressa's relationship overlapped with his marriage in ways that were not publicly acknowledged at the time. Now, I want to be clear, honey. These reports have not been independently verified by major outlets in a definitive way, but the fact that the narrative exists and that it has gained enough traction to reach subreddits with tens of thousands of engaged users tells you something about how the culture is reading this situation. And it lines up almost too neatly with Shalita's core accusation that the divorce paperwork was not what people were told it was. Piece of evidence number 2. Eric Kelly, described in multiple reports as a close associate of the couple, reportedly made comments on social media that were interpreted by many as confirming certain uncomfortable elements of Shalita's version of events. His comments went viral, and other channels covered his statements as a signal that people inside the circle were not aligned with the public narrative Papoose was pushing. When a friend accidentally tells more truth than the man himself, honey, that is a friend the man is going to be avoiding for a very long time. Piece of evidence number 3. The response from Claressa's own inner circle has been notably fractured. Some family members have publicly aligned with Claressa, defending her right to make her own decisions and dismissing Shalita as bitter. But others have gone quiet. And in a family that had been highly public about their support of Claressa's career from the beginning, quiet is not neutral. Quiet is a position. Quiet is what family members do when they cannot publicly defend something they do not privately believe. And multiple TikTok creators with insider access have picked up on the silence and pointed it out specifically. Piece of evidence number 4. The Shalita accusations are not new. This is the part that most channels covering the story are missing entirely. Shalita has been making versions of these claims since late 2025, and she has been remarkably consistent in the specifics. She has named financial patterns. She has named specific decisions she believes were steered. She has repeated the same accusations across multiple platforms without her story shifting significantly. Now here is the counter-argument. Some people will say Shalita is doing this for clout. Some will say she is jealous of Claressa's success. Some will say the entire feud started over a grandmother's funeral and has nothing to do with Papoose'S at all. And I will acknowledge, honey, those points have some validity on the surface. Family drama does get exaggerated. Cousins do lie for attention. But here is what does not fit that narrative. A person seeking clout typically escalates and adds new dramatic elements over time. Shalita has not added. She has repeated. She has stayed on the same core accusations. That is not clout-chasing behavior. That is the behavior of a person who believes what they are saying and is waiting for the rest of the world to catch up. And now we need to talk about what is really going on underneath all of this. Because the personal drama is just the surface of a much bigger story about how hip-hop management structures actually operate. Here is the pattern interrupt. Honey, everything we have talked about so far is entertainment. It is drama. It is the kind of story that lives on Instagram comments and TikTok stitches. But if we stop right here, we are not doing our job. Because underneath the personal accusations, there is a business story that nobody is telling correctly. And I need you to sit up in your seat for this next part, because this is where I stop being a commentator and start being an analyst. Let me walk you through the first systemic layer. Wynn Records. The label that just handed Claressa the biggest deal of her life. Now Wynn Records is not one of the major label giants like Universal or Warner. Wynn operates in a specific corner of the hip-hop and boxing crossover space, and their business model relies heavily on cross-promotional partnerships between recording artists and athletes with mainstream reach. Claressa Shields is not just an artist to a label like Wynn. Claressa Shields is a multi-vertical asset. Boxing revenue, music revenue, endorsement revenue, media appearance revenue. Every one of those verticals feeds back into the label's ability to leverage her name across their entire roster. And who was reportedly the connective tissue between Claressa and the Wynn structure? Papoose himself has publicly claimed credit for that connection. He said it on Drink Champs. He said he was the reason she was in a bidding war. He said his knowledge and his strategy engineered the outcome. Now, I need you to understand what that means in industry terms. When a man publicly takes credit for engineering a woman's $8 million deal, and that same man has an ongoing relationship with the label structure that ultimately signed her, you are not looking at a boyfriend. You are looking at a de facto advisor with a financial interest in the outcome. And whether that interest is formal or informal, it exists. And that is the exact structural pattern Shalita has been trying to describe when she uses words like manipulation and steering. She may not have the industry vocabulary to name what she is seeing, but she is seeing the shape of it clearly. Let me walk you through the second systemic layer, the Salita Promotions side of the equation. Because this deal was not just a Wynn Records deal. It was a joint partnership between Salita Promotions, one of the most active promotional entities in women's boxing, and Wynn Records. That is a hybrid deal. Boxing revenue plus music revenue plus label investment plus promotional infrastructure, all rolled into one multi-fight structure. Hybrid deals like this are extremely complex, and they usually involve multiple advisors, multiple contract negotiators, and multiple people who take a percentage of the total value in exchange for their involvement. The question that nobody is asking, and the question that Shalita has been indirectly asking for months, is very simple. Who is taking what percentage? Because when a deal of this size is announced publicly, the top line number is what everybody sees. The $8 million. But underneath that number, there are advisory fees, there are structural cuts, there are cross-collateralization clauses, and there are strategic partnership provisions that can significantly reduce what the artist actually takes home in year one. And if the person who reportedly engineered the deal is also the person the artist is romantically involved with, you have a fundamental transparency problem that no amount of couples' goals photos can paper over. Let me walk you through the third systemic layer. And this is the one I think matters most. the narrative management operation. Because what we have watched over the last 12 months is not two people falling in love in public. It is a sustained, coordinated, professional narrative management campaign designed to position Papoose and Claressa as one of the great modern hip-hop and sports power couples. Every appearance, every interview, every time post, every wanting a baby in 2026 announcement dropped at a strategic content moment. This is not organic. This is packaged. And when you package a relationship this heavily, you create a vulnerability. Because the moment somebody inside the circle breaks with the packaging, the entire structure looks fake. That is exactly what Shalita has done. She has not attacked the relationship. She has attacked the packaging. And the packaging is where the money lives. That is why Papoose stayed quiet for so long. Not because he did not care. Because he was allegedly working the room, reaching out to family members, managing associates, coordinating the response. When he finally spoke, it did not sound like a man. It sounded like a statement. And statements come from strategy teams, not from hearts. And this brings us to the moment. The truth bomb. The single thing I need you to understand before you leave this video. Because this is the part that reframes everything you have watched so far. Papoose did not break his silence because Shalita forced him to. Papoose broke his silence because the silence was starting to cost him money. Let me say that again, so it lands the way it needs to land. This was not a moral decision. This was not a relationship decision. This was a financial decision. Because every day the accusations sat out there unaddressed. The value of the Wynn Records and Salita Promotions partnership was quietly eroding. Sponsors get nervous. Promotional partners get nervous. Media outlets that have been publishing the couple's goals content start pumping the brakes. And insiders reportedly indicate that the ecosystem around Claressa's $8 million deal is heavily dependent on maintaining a clean public narrative around the couple. When that narrative gets threatened, the deal itself does not disappear, but the ancillary value around it, the endorsements, the media rights, the promotional tie-ins, all of those numbers start to shift in the wrong direction. So Papoose spoke, not to defend Claressa, not to defend the relationship, but to defend the structure. And here is the part that should make your blood cold. The statement he delivered was allegedly not written entirely by him. Multiple insiders have hinted, and one hip-hop insider newsletter picked this up in a subscriber-only post that has been circulating in screenshots. That Papoose's response was reportedly workshopped with input from a communications advisor connected to the label ecosystem. The specific phrasing about opportunists, the very careful deflection, the way he addressed everyone around Claressa without ever addressing Shalita by name. That is not accidental phrasing. That is deliberate phrasing, honey. And that is why the response landed the way it landed, sounding technically correct, but emotionally hollow. Because the words were engineered to protect a business asset, not to defend a woman he loves. And when I say that Claressa is being used, I do not mean it in the shallow gossip sense. I mean it in the structural, systemic, industry sense. She is at the center of an asset structure that depends on the relationship being visible, being celebrated, and being unquestioned. The moment the relationship becomes questionable, the entire asset structure becomes questionable. And the man who reportedly engineered the deal in the first place has every incentive to protect that structure with everything he has, including a statement that was crafted to sound sincere, while carefully avoiding a single verifiable denial of a single specific accusation. Baby, that is not love. That is asset management with better lighting. And Shalita, whether she fully understood the industry mechanics or not, walked into that machinery and pulled a single thread. And the whole thing is unraveling in slow motion, live, on the internet, in front of all of us. But here is where the story turns. And this is why I need you to stay with me all the way to the end. Because Claressa Shields is not a victim. Let me say that clearly. Claressa Shields is a two-time Olympic gold medalist. Claressa Shields is the undisputed champion in 3 weight classes. Claressa Shields is a woman who has fought her entire life to be recognized as the greatest of all time in a sport that historically refused to see her. That kind of woman does not get manipulated forever. That kind of woman does not sit inside a compromised structure indefinitely. That kind of woman eventually sees what is being done, and when she sees it, she moves. And every single piece of evidence in this story, from Shalita's persistence to Eric Kelly's slip-up to the fractured family silence to the workshop response from Papoose, is a puzzle piece that Claressa is watching land in real time. She is not stupid. She is not passive. She is a champion. And champions do not lose their own careers because they refuse to see what was in front of them. They lose relationships. They lose partnerships. They lose people who were never really on their side. But they keep the belt. Claressa is going to keep the belt. Claressa is going to keep the $8 million deal. Claressa is going to keep her name. And when the dust settles on this entire situation, the people who tried to position themselves as essential to her success are going to find out very quickly that Claressa Shields was always the deal. The label wanted Claressa. The promoters wanted Claressa. The sponsors wanted Claressa. The fans wanted Claressa. Papoose'S was a supporting character in her story, not the author of it. And the reason Shalita is willing to burn every bridge in her own family to say what she is saying is because on some level, she knows what most people watching this drama unfold have not figured out yet. Claressa is going to walk out of this stronger than she walked into it. Because that is what champions do. One person builds a career on discipline, sacrifice, and gold medals earned in front of the entire world. The other builds a public image on being visible next to someone who did the actual work. And when the visibility stops being enough, the difference between those two people becomes the only thing left in the room. So no, honey, this is not a sad story. This is a corrective story. This is the beginning of Claressa Shields taking full control of the narrative that has been built around her. And this is only the start, baby. Because there are two developments coming that you absolutely need to be subscribed to hear about. First, insiders are reportedly signaling that Claressa's team is quietly reviewing the advisory structure around her Wynn Records and Salita Promotions deal. And any adjustment to that structure would send a signal through the entire industry that this couple's public unity is not what the packaging suggests. Second, Shalita Savage has reportedly indicated she has more to share, and the next round of her interviews is expected to move beyond family drama and into specific financial receipts that could substantially change the tone of everything we have discussed today. Both of those developments are coming. And when they land, honey, you do not want to be finding out from a screenshot on Twitter 3 days late. You want to hear the real breakdown, the real analysis, the real context from the channel that told you the shape of the story before anybody else did. So if you have made it this far into this video, you are amazing, and you already know what to do. Like the video if it hit different for you. Drop Team Shalita or Team Papoose'S in the comments, and let me see who is really watching this the same way I am watching it. Subscribe and turn the notifications on because the next chapter of this story is going to move fast. And the next video I need you to watch right now because it connects directly to everything we just broke down. Remy Ma is about to enter this conversation in a way nobody is expecting. There are reportedly text messages, there are reportedly receipts, and there is a specific detail about the timeline of her separation from Papoose'S that lines up with the exact month Shalita is now pointing to. When those two stories collide, and I promise you they are about to collide, the entire narrative around this couple flips one more time. Click the next video. I will meet you there. I am your host, and I will see you in the next one.